Biology. Biology is the subject which deals with the study of life. Therefore, this term bio means life, and the suffix means study. Therefore, in biology, we deal with the study of life. In this case, same as we are saying, when we are studying biology, we don't pay attention on the non-living things. Definitely, we just leave ourselves when we are studying biology to non-living things for the sake of understanding the behavior of living organisms. So throughout the study of biology, we are going to be studying life of living organisms. We are not going to be discussing anything related to what does not support or possess life. Therefore, in this lesson of today, we are going to focus on the topic Introduction to Biology. So without wasting time, we are going to go to the summarized notes, and the summarized notes will introduce us to the introduction to biology. So introduction to biology. So we are defining biology as the study of living things or organisms. And we study these living organisms under branches of biology. We have 5 branches of biology. The first one is botany. The second one is zoology. The third one is ecology. The fourth one is biochemistry. And the last one is entomology. When we are talking about the branch botany, we are talking about the study of plants. And we are not talking about the dead plants, we are talking about the living plants. When we are studying animals under the branch of biology known as zoology, we are studying the animals that are possessing life. Ecology. Ecology, we are talking about the study of the ecosystem. So under ecosystem or ecology, we study the interaction pattern of organisms with each other and with their non-living environment. Whether you like it or not, in as much as we study the living organisms under ecology, we are not going to leave out the non-living part where we have non-living organisms, because every time as human beings or as any living organisms, you will find that we'll be interacting with non-living things. For example, when we are in a class, we are going to have books. We are going to be sitting on the desk. Every time when we are looking at what we interact with very much, we do interact with non-living environment. Therefore, when we are studying the relationship between how we live, we definitely interact with non-living environment. When we are watching the TV, when we are using the cup, when we are drinking water, when we are cooking, we use pots. So every time we interact with something that does not possess life, that is ecology. But it doesn't mean we are studying non-living things, no. But we are studying living things in relation to their interaction with the environment. And when we are studying that, when we are observing life like that, we are studying biology under the branch of ecology. Biochemistry. This is the branch of biology which links biology to chemistry. We have chemical reactions that takes place in the living organisms, definitely the living cells. Look at the process of respiration in animals and plants. You understand that when we are explaining that biological term, respiration, at the end of the day we are going to involve chemical reactions, because there we are going to be reacting glucose with oxygen. Glucose is a chemical, oxygen is also a chemical, but what is going to be happening when the reaction is taking place, that is going to be biological. Why? Because the reaction will be taking place inside the living cells of the living organism. Now, since we'll be studying chemical reactions and the chemical reactions will be taking place in the living organisms, we call that biochemistry because we are linking biology with chemistry. So every time we are discussing the processes or chemical reactions that occur in living organisms, we study those reactions under biochemistry. Entomology. When we are studying the behavior of insects and the animal kingdoms, you will find that we are going to be discussing the behavior of insects. So when we are studying insects, we study that under the branch of biology, which is known as entomology. What we have discussed so far, we have not discussed anything related to substances that does not possess life. We are talking about living organisms, and we are studying living organisms under branches of biology. And these living organisms, you will see that they are going to have characteristics. What are the characteristics? We are talking about the features of living organisms that are going to be enabling us to distinguish the living organisms from the non-living organisms. Now, we study the characteristics of living things or organisms using a simplest mnemonic which is known as Mr. Graphic. Once you know this Mr. Graphic, you know how to write it. It will help you in your exam to remember the characteristics of living organisms. Now, in summary, I am not going to discuss this in detail because we'll start explaining each point downward where we are going. So, what does it mean when we say Mr. Graphic? We are starting with M. This M stands for movement. R stands for reproduction. Another R stands for respiration. G stands for growth. E stands for excretion. Feeding, which is F, is also known as nutrition. I stand for irritability, which is also known as sensitivity. Cells, we have a letter C, which stands for cells. In short, we are saying if at all a substance is able to live, that substance should be able to move, it should be able to reproduce, it should be able to grow, it should be able to carry out the process of respiration, it should be able to carry out the process of excretion, it should be able to feed, it should be able to sense or to detect the change in the environment, that is the stimulus, and it should comprise living cells. Those are the characteristics of every living organism. Now, what is movement? Movement is defined as the process by which organisms changes its location and posture without external help. I'll be practical. You can pick a stone. You carry the stone with you. It doesn't mean the stone is going to be moving on its own, but it will move or it will change the location because you have used your external force to lift it and you carry it. And you yourself, you are going to carry it because you have energy to carry that stone. It doesn't mean the stone is moving on its own. It's because of your external help. Therefore, we are not going to classify that stone as a living organism because it is able to move out of your help. But when you are moving, you yourself, no one is going to cause you to move. You are going to be using energy because your body cells have energy. The same energy is going to be used as for you to move. Meaning you are not going to get that help from external environment, but from internal energy. Why? Because you possess life, because you are able to live, because you have cells that are that possess life. The cells in your body possess life. They are able to carry out their functions. That is movement. Now, the movement of an entire organism from one place to another is called locomotion. Locomotion is whereby you are using your internal skeleton, or for insects, the external skeletons, or for worms, hydroskeleton, as for them to change the location from one place to another. That movement is known as locomotion. But plants, they have no ability to change the location, but they can change the posture. They can move just a part. That's the reason why we don't call the movement of plants as locomotion, but we call it tropism, because only a part of a plant is able to change. For example, the plant, a part of the plant may move toward water when we are talking about the roots. It is not the entire plant. The stem is not going to move toward water, but only the roots will move toward water. That is tropism. That movement is tropism, and it will be specifically known as hydrotropism because it is moving toward water. So the way we move as human beings or other living organisms that are not plants is different to how the plants respond to stimulus. But plants are living organisms because they have parts that are able to move. The feature number 2, we are saying respiration. We are saying respiration is the release of energy from food substances inside living cells. Remember, I said living cells is a characteristic because every living organism is going to have living cells, and it is in the living cells where the process of respiration is going to be taking place. Now, if the substance is able to release energy, we are going to say that substance is the living thing or organism. Why? Because energy is only going to be released out of the living cells. For example, you eat food, you take in food into your body, your food is going to be digested in your alimentary canal, and at the end of the day, the end products will be absorbed into your blood, and from your blood, the food products will be assimilated to your body cells. That is where now energy is going to be released. Only a living organism has that ability to carry out that purpose. Now, we are saying we have two types of respiration. We have respiration which is known as aerobic, and we have the other one which is known as anaerobic respiration. What is under aerobic respiration? Aerobic means oxygen, meaning this is the type of respiration which takes place or where energy is released in the presence of oxygen. That is aerobic respiration. Wow. Anaerobic, an means without. Without what? Without oxygen. So this is without oxygen respiration, meaning here energy is released in the absence of oxygen. That is anaerobic respiration. Now, since aerobic respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen, we expect a lot of energy to be released because the food substance is going to be oxidized. Now, under anaerobic respiration, since there will be no energy, we expect small amount of energy to be released because the food substance is not going to be oxidized. We go to growth. Definitely, where as you are going to be watching my video, you understand that the way you are today is not the way you were born. And that growth you have undergone is irreversible. It is permanent. You are not going to be called a child when you have grown up. Meaning you have increased in size permanently. And only a living organism has that ability to grow. A non-living organism will never grow. Why? Because a non-living organism have no living cells, because every animal, every plant, or any kind of living organism is able to grow because of the multiplication of cells inside the body. It is because of the multiplication of cells, living organisms becomes complicated. That's what we call complexity. Meaning, you are going to be complicated, you are going to become huge, such that it will be very difficult to understand you. The way you were and the way you are going to appear now, it is going to be different. Why? Because the number of cells increases, the number, even the mass itself increases. That is very important. Reproduction. We understand that reproduction is the process by which living organisms produce their young ones. Young ones are also known as offsprings. Now, every living organism is able to reproduce at a certain stage. When you reach the maturity where you are able to reproduce, you'll be able to produce the young ones. And in that reproduction, you understand that depending on the nature of the living organisms, some reproduction undertakes sexual and others takes asexual. Sexual reproductions involves the use of gametes or sexual cells. Therefore, we are saying we have two types of reproduction. We have sexual and asexual. In sexual reproduction, Offsprings are produced by the fusion of male and female gametes from one or two parents. You understand where we are going? Because reproduction is a topic on its own. This is just the introduction. In asexual reproduction, we are saying there are no sexual gametes that are used. That's the reason why it is called asexual reproduction. Excretion. The removal of metabolic wastes. You need to understand, when we are talking about metabolic, we are talking about the reactions that takes place inside the living cell. Meaning excretion. For excretion to take place, we are talking about the removal of toxic substances from the living cells directly. Such as urea, excess salts, excess water, biopigments, and carbon dioxide. These substances are excreted from the living cells. To excrete is to remove. Feeding. Feeding is also known as nutrition. Nutrition is the process by which living organisms obtain food. The process of taking food, for example, I am giving an example of us human beings. By the moment you are going to put your food in your buccal cavity or your mouth, feeding starts. And only a living organism is able to undertake that process of picking the food and taking it into the mouth. A non-living organism has no ability of picking the food, as the movement of the non-living organisms depend on the external help. Meaning, for you to take in food, you are supposed to have energy so that no external help will be used as for you to pick the food. Now, that process of taking food into the buccal cavity of the human being is what we call ingestion. Only living organism is able to do that. But the way living organisms feed differ. We cannot say the way we feed as human beings, the way plants feed. No, that's a reason why we have types of feeding or nutrition. So we are saying there are two types of nutrition, which are autotroph or heterotroph, or should I say and heterotroph. Auto means self and trophic means feeding. So auto means self, trophic means feeding. So we have auto feeding, whereby we are saying self-feeding. Plants make their own food and they feed on the same food they make. As human beings and other animals, we are not able to make our own food. We depend on plants. Therefore, we are known as heterotrophs, because we depend on plants. And since we feed on food made by other living organisms, we are dependent on plants. Therefore, we are saying autotrophic nutrition is the type where an organism makes its own food e.g. green plants. Heterotroph, hetero means different, trophic means feed. So heterotrophic nutrition is the type where organisms take in food present in bodies of others. That is very important for you to understand. You are going to buy meat. You are going to depend on plants. When you get cassava leaves, it means you are going to get the nutrients from the plant cassava leaves, and you benefit from the nutrients present in those leaves. You are not the one who made the nutrients in those cassava leaves. Therefore, since you are getting those nutrients from the bodies of other living organisms, you are known as heterotroph. And the mode of nutrition is known as heterotrophic type of nutrition. Irritability or sensitivity. Every living organism should be able to detect and respond to stimuli. Actually, stimuli is any change in the environment. Therefore, we are saying a stimulus is any change in the environment which causes the response of an organism. For example, we may have an increased temperature. You are going to be sensitive. When the temperature is too low, you are going to be sensitive. Why? Because you have senses, you have cells that are able to detect the change in the environment. You are sensitive. And we say the skin is very sensitive. Any change in the environment, it will detect that it is too cold. It is too hot. Why? Because you are sensitive. The stone is not sensitive because it has no sensitive cells. Cells. Cells are basic functional unit of living organisms. Living organisms. We are not saying non-living organisms, but functional unit of living organisms. Some organisms are made of single cells, such as bacteria. Such organisms are known as unicellular organisms. Unicellular means one cell organism. Others organisms are made of many cells, such as fungi, plants, and animals. Such organisms are known as multicellular organisms because they are made of more than one cells. Multi means a lot. Now, in my conclusion, I am going to talk about the chemical reactions because we talked about an biochemistry, and we said since we have discussed cells, it is in the cells where chemical reactions take place. Now, those chemical reactions are known as metabolisms. Therefore, we are saying metabolism or metabolic reactions is actually the sum total of chemical reactions that takes place inside the living cell or cells. There are two types of metabolic reactions. We have anabolic and catabolic. Anabolic involves the building, catabolic involves the breaking down. Therefore, we are defining anabolic reactions are as metabolic reactions where large complex molecules are synthesized from small and simple ones. For example, when we look at the process of photosynthesis, protein synthesis, and the synthesis of fats, those are examples of anabolic reaction. Photosynthesis, actually, in this process, we use water and carbon dioxide. Water is just simple molecules. Carbon dioxide, they are just simple molecules, but what is formed out of out of carbon dioxide and water is a complex food substance which is glucose, and very important in our body. So that is anabolic because we are building a large complex food substance such as glucose from simple molecules, water and carbon dioxide. Another example is protein synthesis, where we combine just simple amino acids. When we join the simple amino acids together, we convert the amino acids to peptides. When we add a lot of amino acids to peptides, we are going to convert the peptides to proteins. We are combining the simple units of food nutrients to make the complex food substance, that is anabolic reactions. When we look at synthesis of fats, we combine actually fat acids and glycerol as for us to come up with the fats. Meaning we are using simple molecules to come up with the complex food substances, that is anabolic reactions. Catabolic reactions now is the opposite of anabolic reaction, because now we are breaking down the large food molecules into simpler ones. For example, the process of digestion, we break down fats, for example, using enzymes and bile salts. We break down starch to glucose. That is digestion. In the process of respiration, that glucose which is formed now is going to be broken down further into carbon dioxide and water. And in that process, energy is going to be released, which is very important to our body living cells. Therefore, in conclusion, we are going to say all metabolic reactions are catalyzed by enzymes. An enzyme is a biological catalyst, and a catalyst is inside the living organism. So you need to understand that as I am speaking to you, I need energy, and this energy will come from the food nutrients, and these nutrients need to be digested, that is catabolic. And when this food is digested, the food end products will go to the body cells, where they are going to be used further. For example, glucose is going to be oxidized to release energy. That is still breaking down. That is catabolic. So it's very important, my dear learners, that you understand my introduction. This is my first video in biology, and I have started making videos in biology. I just hope we are going to move together. I am going to be discussing complicated topics that are going to be made simple so that you can understand the science, because this science needs to be understood. Thank you so much for today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget to do a subscription so that we are able to move together. In case you want to be notified next time when I upload the video, once you subscribe, you'll be notified anytime I post a new video. For now, I say thank you so much and have a good day.